He is loud.
A little bit of a scare here at the VMAC coming out of the 8th training camp practice. What's the latest on Geno Smith's status moving forward? We're going to be breaking that down and much more here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks.
You are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, host of the Locked On Seahawks podcast, your daily Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Glad to be joined here on our Thursday episode by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s out there, whether you're listening up in Everett, Washington, or over in Windsor, Colorado. We greatly appreciate each and every one of you for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Kind of a somber day here at the VMAC. Not necessarily that it's bad news. We don't know yet what the situation exactly is with Geno Smith, but we're going to be diving into his injury, the undisclosed injury that we don't know a ton of details about, what that could mean for the Seahawks on offense, other takeaways coming out of the 8th training camp practice, and Derick Hall will be stopping by from the VMAC for our latest training camp interview. Without further ado, let's get to it. Rob, now for our lead story here on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. Geno Smith out for a second consecutive day for the Seahawks. He didn't participate in yesterday's walkthrough practice. He was an observer today wearing his retro uniform, but no pads, no helmet, did not participate. And Mike Macdonald didn't exactly have the most encouraging update, saying that he's working through some things and that he is going to undergo imaging tonight. That immediately got the antennas going up for me, Rob. And I will say this, on Tuesday, I can't tell you who the player was that hit Geno Smith because there were 2 or 3 guys that were in the back, and I don't think it wasn't like a hard hit or anything like that. Nobody should be going after a defensive player on their X account trying to blame them for this. For all we could tell, it almost looked like Geno might have had his feet get tossed up a little bit, caught up a little bit in the scrum. But he had a little bit of a hitch in his step for a couple of plays, but he didn't exit. He finished the practice, and really most of the practice, he looked just fine. But now, Rob, he has not practiced the last 2 days. Yesterday, a source here in the building told us that it was knee-hip related. Today, Mike Macdonald would not give specifics on what he was getting imaging done on. Certainly, that is an ominous report that isn't necessarily going to inspire confidence from Seahawk fans.
No, it's certainly, concerning. At the same time, until you know, you don't know, of course. And I was initially spooked a little bit yesterday, Corbin, when I heard that it was a walkthrough. And it's not just Geno Smith who has had some injury issues. Of course, Draymond Jones continues to be out. Oluwatimi was out today as well. There are some nagging injuries starting to kind of pop up for the Seahawks that are a little bit concerning. But when your starting quarterback is not present for what was characterized as a walkthrough yesterday, I just thought, that's kind of odd. It's a walkthrough. How difficult could it be, again, for a veteran like Geno Smith? Look, I know that he has been an absolute superstar throughout the first part of training camp, but still, it's a walkthrough. The fact that he was out yesterday, and then the news today that he was out again, as you said, came out there in the traditional blue Seahawk uniform, I think is encouraging. Obviously, it says that he is still at the facility. They are not shipping him off somewhere to try to check for an immediate MRI and things like that. But still, when you're talking about a quarterback at Geno Smith's age, you're talking about knees and hips. These are concerning news. So again, this is the day that I think a lot of Seahawks fans right now are kind of, like I was a little bit when I was driving a rental car in LA for the last 8 days, Corbin. I just thought, you know what? I used to complain about the car that I have at home, but now that I'm in a rental car and there are some idiosyncrasies out here, I'm kind of questioning. It's like, it makes you wonder if you're not being, 100% appreciative of what you've got. Right now, there are some Seahawk fans who maybe were criticizing Geno Smith before, but now that there is a possibility that could be Sam Howell or PJ Walker being your starting quarterback moving forward, there's an awful lot of Geno Smith fans out there who are kind of biting their nails down to the bit, hoping that number 7's okay.
Yeah, this is one of those situations where we're not saying he's going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks. We're not saying that he's going to be back in practice tomorrow. I would be shocked if he's practicing tomorrow. I think he's going to miss at least one more day, maybe not participate in the mock scrimmage on Saturday either. It just depends on what the results of the imaging are. And again, we don't know what he's specifically having imaging done on. Mike Macdonald opted not to give specifics on that, and that seems to be the way that he's handling injuries at this point. So no specific details. Again, we were told by a source with the team that it was knee hip related yesterday. That was not what Mike Macdonald said today. So with that, Sam Howell, now all the focus goes to Sam Howell here, getting his first reps with the first team offense. And that was kind of my caveat. He looked pretty poor the first couple of days of training camp practice and was throwing all over the place. But the caveat, he was playing with second and third string receivers. Yes. We got to see him with DK Metcalf. We got to see him with Tyler Lockett and company today, Jackson Smith and Jigba. And he was far from perfect. He threw a pick six to Trey Brown. It looked like a communication mix-up between him and DK Metcalf. He had 3 passes minimum dropped by DK Metcalf today that were well thrown. So he didn't have the best of luck early with his receivers. And he still had a few throws that got away from him that sailed. But at the same time, he might have had the best red zone period that we've seen by a Seahawks quarterback in this entire training camp so far. 2 touchdowns to DK Metcalf on back-to-back passes where he put it perfectly up in the air for his big guy to go get it. Had a touchdown in the flats to Ken Walker III. You're seeing him get more comfortable by day. And now that Geno Smith is banged up and we don't know how long he's going to be out, this is that opportunity for Sam Howell with this new coaching staff to show growth and maybe demonstrate some of those franchise quarterback capabilities that John Schneider and company believe is there as he gets more comfortable with this offense. This is a big opportunity for him, even if it's just a couple practices, to play with the number ones. And I thought today, even though he was far from perfect, has a lot of things to work on, we are seeing him take big strides here the last couple of days with this offense, and he seems to be getting more comfortable.
Which is certainly very encouraging. As you said, I mean, obviously John Schneider, they made the decision to make the trade for Sam Howell in the offseason after Mike Macdonald, of course, was made the head coach. Previous to the draft, the Seahawks shifting 2 draft picks to Washington Commanders to get Sam Howell. At his young age, still just 24 years old, already has a full season as the starter in the Washington Commanders. It's not like you have nothing at the backup quarterback position. And how encouraging is it that Sam Howell has his best day? And as you said, it came in the red zone. I was lucky enough to have a podcast that, of course, you were very familiar with former 2-time NFL general manager Scott McCloughan. And he would comment often, Corbin, about the number one thing that he looked for at quarterbacks, and I'm paraphrasing here, of course, but was their effectiveness in the red zone. The decisions have to be that much quicker. The accuracy has to be that much better. You have to have some mobility to you. You have to have some velocity and some touch to you. And Sam Howell has all of those traits. So, the one that matters, of course, is what that John Schneider and what Mike Macdonald and Ryan Grubb think about Sam Howell. But I can speak for myself. I think that there are franchise caliber traits with Sam Howell at the quarterback position. Look, there's no question about it. You want Geno Smith to be your starter week 1 against the Denver Broncos. But I do believe that Sam Howell has enough talent to be successful starting quarterback in the NFL, definitely in Ryan Grubb's offense. And as you said before, there was a little bit of a learning curve here with Sam Howell and Ryan Grubb's offense. But the fact is that he is developing some momentum. And frankly, I'm encouraged by what I've seen on tape with PJ Walker as well.
Yeah. PJ had a really nice pass today with a 75-yard touchdown to Laviska Shenault. So we did get to see a big play from PJ Walker, and he got the most reps he's had this entire training camp because Geno Smith is out. So this is an opportunity for those other quarterbacks to step up, particularly Sam Howell, though. He is going to be under the microscope here, and I thought it was a good, not great day. Again, there's still too many throws getting away from him, but in his defense, he threw 2 beautiful passes along the sideline that DK Metcalf just point blank dropped. And then there was another curl route in 7-on-7 Metcalf dropped that the ball was put right on him. So, and even at pick 6, it didn't look like the communication between him and Metcalf was completely on. And these guys haven't worked together very much. That is worth noting. It's practice for a reason. So I was encouraged. It is a big step forward. Now the question is, can he take more steps forward here if Geno Smith's going to be out for a while. We don't know the extent of this injury, how long he's going to be out. And so that is going to be a cloud that's kind of hovering over the Seahawks organization right now until they have an idea what Geno Smith's health status is, how long he may be out. Until then, it's the Sam Howell show, at least for now, with the first team offense. When we come back, we're going to continue diving into the 8th training camp practice, aside from Sam Howell and Geno Smith. What else happened at the VMAC today in the 3rd padded practice? We'll get to that here in a moment, coming up next on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends at Game Time. You shouldn't have to skip a car payment when you want to buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and with their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Back in early May, my wife and I scored awesome lower bowl seats to see the Colorado Avalanche in the postseason, and they beat the Winnipeg Jets, and we got those tickets for under $125 for a postseason game, and we got to enjoy a really fun victory in playoff season. Game Time has deals on tickets right at the day of the event, and the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price to write your own memories. If you find tickets in the same section row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined, as always, by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s who are listening in. Thank you, as always, for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Doing the show today live from the VMAC 8th training camp practice now in the books. After a walkthrough yesterday, the pads came back out. There was plenty of hitting in today's practice. Got some big plays as well. Obviously, Rob, the Geno Smith injury, the lack of information on that is the biggest storyline coming out of today's practice, getting a more extended view of Sam Howell as well. But there was some shakeup at some other positional groups, and I want to start off with the offensive line because George Fant, the Seahawks clearly are playing the rest game with him. Get him as many rest days they can because you can't have him go down. Abraham Lucas is not back yet. They're trying to keep him in bubble wrap, and with him being 32 now, they've given him a few rest days. He was out today, not injury related. Oluwatimi with a tricep issue. It doesn't sound like it's significant at all. May have a chance to practice tomorrow, but Nick Harris was in his spot with the first team offense at center today, and we got to see McClendon Curtis again at the right tackle position as he continues to add value to his chances of making this 53-man roster. And it was really an interesting day, Rob, because early on you could tell there were a couple of backups in. There was some issues creating push. The run game was getting shut down. Boye Mafe in particular had a play that he was able to get through Nick Harris and Laken Tomlinson, able to get into the backfield and got Ken Walker wrapped up for a 2-yard loss. But the group really rebounded as the practice went on, and Sam Howell had more time to throw. McClendon Curtis had some really good reps against Uchenna Nwosu and Boye Mafe in the red zone period, and Nick Harris had a key block on Zach Charbonnet's 6-yard touchdown in the same red zone period. So there were some encouraging plays here. What we are seeing, at least in my opinion, early on, there's still a lot of questions with the offensive line, but I do feel like the depth and the upside of that depth is better than it was a year ago.
Yeah, well, no, I 100% agree with you in that regard. I just think that this is a deeper offensive line group than it was the last couple of years, frankly. And let's start off at the right tackle position. As you mentioned, McClendon Curtis taking over as the quote-unquote starter here with George Fant sitting out, Abraham Lucas still injured. You know, Corbin, one of the things I always kind of went back to during the draft process is the Seahawks didn't seem to prioritize selecting a right tackle, and that suggested to me that they felt pretty confident that Abraham Lucas is going to be fine. the fact that they are giving George Fant some veteran days off at this point is a little bit more concerning to me, that they do view George Fant possibly as their starting option here. So again, it's just a reminder that Abraham Lucas has not been on the field for the Seahawks during training camp yet. And so any suggestion that he is going to be the starter in week 1 of the regular season is pure conjecture at this point. And George Fant might be the guy. So you do have to exercise some extreme caution with him. Obviously, it's very encouraging to hear that McClendon Curtis had a strong day, just considering the fact that we believe that Seattle's pass rush on the outside, Boye Mafe, Darrell Taylor, Chenna Nwosu, Derick Hall, et cetera, is one of the potentially the more improved areas for this club. But I love the fact that you mentioned that, again, that it was McClendon Curtis at right tackle, that it was Nick Harris at center as your starters. To me, I don't want to go back and focus in on the quarterback position, but again, it's all the more encouraging that Sam Howell had a fairly strong day today, considering that 2/5 of the offensive line were, at least players that in the past we've considered as backup options. So again, that shows a great deal of resiliency from Sam Howell, especially considering that maybe DK Metcalf didn't have his best day either. One last thing, I have to mention this because, again, when I saw the news about Geno Smith, my immediate reaction is, okay, Sam Howell, this is your job to lose. PJ Walker, what do you got? And I was encouraged by PJ Walker's tape. Well, now, when I say that, understand that he last year threw 1 touchdown and 6 interceptions and completed 54% of his passes. Obviously, that is not what you're looking for in a long-term starter. But I saw an ability to kind of drop sidearmed and throw a little bit of the screen passes that I think are going to be more important to Ryan Grubb's offense. And I also saw wicked touch over the top, just beautiful pillow soft touch over the top. For most NFL teams, including the Cleveland Browns, who PJ Walker was with last year, the Carolina Panthers, with which he played with previously in the NFL, and of course the Temple Owls, where he played his college ball. Corbin, he didn't have the receiver talent that he has here with the Seahawks. If you can do that little sidearm kind of screen game with dynamic running backs like the Seahawks have, with playmaking wide receivers, again, like the Seahawks have, I think that PJ Walker is not nothing here and very much a factor should Geno Smith's injury be longer than Seahawks fans would hope.
Yeah, he's going to get more opportunities just like Sam Howell is going to be getting right now. And so certainly the ball is in PJ Walker's court at minimum to expand his value maybe for some other teams that might be out there looking at quarterbacks as well once we get to the preseason. Staying on the offensive side of the ball, I mentioned Laviska Shenault earlier. He had the big touchdown catch from PJ Walker, and I think there's a lot to be encouraged about in terms of the usage here. And this is more off of what we've seen in the past. I mean, Laviska Shenault had 50 carries in the first 4 NFL seasons. He has been active in the run game. He is one of those receivers that you can move around the formation. We know Ryan Grubb likes players like that. We got to see him take a reverse today on a pitch and picked up some decent yards in the red zone, had that 75-yard touchdown showing the downfield ability. This looks to me like a player. I know targets are going to be few and far between with the studs that the Seahawks have at the top of their receiving core, but this is a guy that can carve out a role in this offense because he is a player you can manufacture touches for. This is what they were hoping D. Eskridge was going to be. Laviska Shenault actually is that player that you can manufacture those touches for in the run game, quick screens that can still win downfield too, as he showed today. And so this is a guy, again, I feel like the receiving competition is pretty much over. And I think Shenault is one of those 6 receivers that's going to be on his football team. And that's not even mentioning the special teams contributions that he could make on kick and punt returns potentially for the Seahawks. So I feel like he's doing what he needs to do, showing the flexibility to be on this roster in 2024.
Well, you just said something there that I definitely has me sidetracked here. When you said the wide receiver competition is over, I would just suggest to you, Corbin, that there are 31 other NFL teams out there with wide receivers and some of them who have speed. And that is one of the things that I am just kind of guessing who your 6 wide receivers would be. DK, Tyler Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jake Bobo. I assume Laviska Shenault. And knowing you, I think you're probably going to say Derick Young. And so, again, I am thinking that of those receivers, look, I know that Derick Young ran a 4.4 at 220 pounds, which is freakish. It's amazing. still, I don't see that kind of instant juice. So I would argue that the Seahawks need a wide receiver that has some elusiveness, not just power, not just straight line speed, but some manufacture, elusiveness, make people miss kind of thing. So again, maybe that's a receiver who's already on the Seahawks roster. Maybe that's a Aesop Winston. Maybe that's a D. Eskridge. Maybe, again, that's somebody that's not yet on the roster. But as fascinated as I am by today's news, that comment in particular is something that I just had to kind of push back on because, again, going through 5 different NFL training camps over the last 10 days or so, that is something I think is in abundance throughout the NFL. And the Seahawks scouts are very much keeping their eyes out.
Yeah, they could go that route. I'm more speaking to the fact the guys that are on the roster right now. I just think that the 6 guys that are at the top, I feel like the cream has risen to the top. And I think Derick Young is another player. He was one of the guys on my Who's Hot list yesterday. He had another good day today with a couple really nice catches. So it just feel like you have 6 guys there. But Shenault is one of those 6. To me, his positional flexibility and his ability to be one of those guys that you can manufacture touches and yardage with, that's something this offense is going to be looking to add to some of the pieces they have. And so I'm encouraged by how they're using him. As for the defense, we've talked so much about Devin Witherspoon, who would have had a sack today on a blitz. It was fantastic. I enjoyed it. But we've talked about him. Tariq Woolen's having a great training camp. Artie Burns is one of my surprises. Trey Brown has played really well, had a couple of nice plays today, had the pick 6 on Sam Howell. But let's give a little love to a couple of the guys at the bottom of the depth chart, because DJ James had an incredible interception today, a pass that was deflected to the line of scrimmage. It was one of those that wasn't popped up in the air. It was just nicked, but it caused the pass to go down to the ground quickly, and he managed to get his hands underneath the ball on a diving pick, and that got everybody stirred up on the field. The crowd was going nuts. It was a fantastic interception. And then Carlton Johnson, the undrafted rookie, made a fantastic play. Derick Young was wide open, and I don't know how he made up the ground that he did. Maybe it's that 4.28 speed, but was able to get those arms out and swat the pass on a diving pass deflection away. If he misses, it's probably a touchdown, but he was able to get his hand on it. And even Lance Boykin had a couple really nice coverages on Jake Bobo and Derick Young today on deep routes that forced overthrows out of bounds by Howell and PJ Walker. So it's just showing you the depth that the Seahawks truly have at that cornerback position, because you're not going to keep all these guys, at least on your active roster, but you are seeing guys even at the bottom of the depth chart that are contributing day in and day out of that cornerback spot. It just shows you the pure depth that they've got there.
Yeah, I think that's the deepest position on their roster. We've talked before about offensive tackle, wide receiver, but I do think that it is the cornerback position. Obviously, the top end talent that you have with Tariq Woolen and Devin Witherspoon in particular. But as you just mentioned, with DJ James and obviously the other Auburn corner Nehemiah Pritchard, he's had some splashy plays, at least what I saw in the OTAs early on. Lance Boykin, and then Carlton Johnson. Again, I mean, these are guys that have legitimate size, legitimate speed, more size with Boykin, more speed with Johnson, and are both just kind of, they locate the football pretty well and make some plays on it. So that's very encouraging to me. So again, that's a positional group that I'm excited about seeing how things kind of unfold. I wanted to ask you this. I saw that Mike Morris returned, as and that to me is very encouraging news. And Derick Hall has been having a splash camp. Is there anybody else on the defensive side of the ball, Corbin, over the last couple of days that really has kind of jumped out to you as maybe taking advantage of these opportunities? Maybe with Easton Gibbs, for example, being released. Is there any of the linebackers that is kind of jumping up and making some plays now that the pads are on and people are playing?
Well, I can tell you Easton Gibbs isn't making plays because he was cut yesterday. Yeah, so the Seahawks don't have him getting any snaps. But I would say Tyrese Knight, there were a couple of nice plays that he made today where he showed off his speed, and you can see the way that he can run with running backs, which there's not a lot of linebackers at that size that can do that. And I've been mentioning Artie Burns as well. I continue to be impressed, and he's still getting reps. The first team, they're mixing him in at nickel. There's a lot of fun stuff that they are doing right now. Trey Brown had a really good back and forth day. It was an exciting stalemate with DK Metcalf. Metcalf won a couple of the red zone reps, and then Brown had a 2-point conversion he swatted away. He had to pick 6 with Metcalf against him. And so that, again, is that iron sharpening iron. Just two guys that couldn't be any different size-wise, but they are incredibly competitive dudes that play with physicality and toughness. And so it's a lot of fun to watch those two go at each other. There's a number of names we could mention. And one of them that I've been talking about a lot here is Derick Hall. And interestingly enough, we're going to have a chance to chat with Derick Hall here coming up from the VMAC, my one-on-one with him, training camp interview, one of the rising second-year players for the Seahawks so far in Mike Macdonald's defense. We'll catch up with Derick on what he thinks about the defense, where he feels he's improved the most, and much more. That'll be coming up next year on our Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This episode is brought your way by our friends at FanDuel. We love sports. We love them so much. We never want them to stop. But with the playoffs winding down and the Olympics even starting to wind down, sports aren't sportsing like we want them to. But FanDuel lets us keep the sports going whenever we want. All we have to do is open the app and dream up any bets anytime we're in the mood. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $200, win or lose. Will Steph Curry hit 20-plus points in the U.S. men's basketball team's next game? Is Byron Murphy II going to have a strong shot at winning Defensive Rookie of the Year? Can Vlad Guerrero Jr. get to 35 home runs for the Blue Jays? You can bet on it all on an app that is safe, secure, and easy to use. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com and add a big win to your summer bucket list today. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Welcome back to the Thursday edition of Locked On Seahawks. This is your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to be joined as always by my co-host in crime, Rob Rang. And a special thanks to all the 12s out there as always. Thank you as always, Locked On Seahawks, your first listen 5 days a week. We greatly appreciate it. Last year, I don't want to say that it was necessarily a disappointment, but Derick Hall, being a second-round pick out of Auburn, wasn't able to generate a sack, only 5 quarterback hits. It did feel at times like the Seahawks were really trying to figure out how to maximize his skills in their scheme, and it didn't necessarily always come together. There were a few splash plays with tackles for loss, but certainly a player at Auburn, 2-time All-SEC selection, high motor, electric athlete, a player that you certainly can count on that's going to make big plays for you. But going into year 2, Derick Hall, this is a guy who has really taken a big step forward so far in training camp. And I had the opportunity to chat with him. We'll get to that interview in a second. But Rob, I know this is a guy that you had pegged as a breakout candidate for this season. And so far, at least in training camp, that has been something that we have seen from the Seahawks to this point.
Yeah, and Corbin, you kind of said it earlier when we're talking about, say, Laviska Shenault and Derick Young, and as well as D. Eskridge, that maybe that Laviska Shenault is becoming the player that the Seahawks hoped that D. Eskridge could be. I think that there are shades of what the Seahawks hoped that L.J. Collier would be when you look at Derick Hall. And right now there's a lot of Seahawks fans like, I don't want anything to do with L.J. Collier. I can tell you that L.J. Collier was a damn good college football player, and that he is big, he's physical, he uses hands well. It just didn't work out here in the Seahawks. He's actually having some success post Seattle with the Arizona Cardinals at this point. To me, that is exactly the type of player, highly physical player who's got more juice than you would expect, considering that he's 265, 270 pounds. And again, it's just the pure physicality that you see with Derick Hall that was very encouraging to me. And look, again, with L.J. Collier playing at TCU, maybe some questionable competition in that conference in comparison to the SEC, where, as you said, Derick Hall was a 2-time All-SEC player, goes to the Senior Bowl, really stands out there as well. And while the sack numbers were not there a year ago in his rookie season, obviously, the run stuffing numbers were there. It was enough to suggest to me that he could wind up having a very similar type of breakout season, maybe not quite as many sacks as the 10 that Boye Mafe had for the Seahawks a year ago, but still, I do think that Derick Hall might just be the defensive player this year, Corbin, who is going to go from being kind of an also-ran for the Seahawks to being a really significant contributor in year 2 in the NFL.
I enjoyed having the opportunity to chat with Derick, who, again, he's been one of the breakout stars, at least in camp. Every day he's coming up with some splashy plays. He's drawing praise from Uchenna Nwosu, the defensive coordinators. Mike Macdonald's been raving about him. He has been off to a really good start in training camp, and just getting an idea where his mindset's at going into year 2. He was a really fun interview. Take a listen.
How's the off season for you? I know this was your first full off season, not coming off of a draft, and you had your opportunity to look back at the film and the way last year went for you. So how was the off season?
Off season was good. Took time to watch the film of the things that I feel like I can do better, and number one was really my pass rush. Trying to enhance that and do things a little bit better to help give me that next step, that next edge, over my opponent, using my hands more and not relying so much on power. And, working counter moves off my long arm and different things like that.
When you looked back at the film, what were some things that jumped out to you as positives? Because I think sometimes players, they focus so much on the negatives, but what were some things that you looked at maybe that you did better than you thought you did last year? I
think just the growth, throughout the season overall, from game 1 to game 2 to game 3, all the way to 17, just the growth. And, the I guess how more comfortable I got, as the season went on, and being more confident in my abilities to play in this league and on this level, I think was really the biggest thing. And then also being able to still be physical and stop the run and continue to take those steps in that aspect of my game as well.
Looking at that growth, what was the biggest eye opener for you? Because you have OTAs and mini camps, and then training camp comes out, and then you got to play against other teams. What was the biggest eye opener for you going against NFL competition last year?
I think that you see one thing on tape and you get to the game, it's a completely different thing. Okay, he gives up this, but then you get to the game like, dang, this dude really sharpened that tool. Or, maybe he just had an off week, but it's not really what, a lot of times was. I mean, film was pretty consistent, but you see games where, guys are getting beat on certain things. Like, okay, well, let me try to have something to prepare for that. And then it isn't what you expect. So I think that's the biggest shocker, just really everybody being great, everybody being good, everybody, working towards one common goal, and that's to be a world champion at the end of the year. So everybody doing whatever it takes to be successful.
I was just talking to Mike about this from the offensive lineman perspective, but how much did you have to zero in on details as a pass rusher? Because, at college level, it's easier to tell, oh, that guy's foot's going a certain direction, he's going to be doing stuff. And NFL tackles tend to button that up quite a bit. How much more detail do you have to pay attention to, and now you know that you have to pay attention to be able to be an effective pass rusher or even a run defender in the league?
I think sometimes you still get those tendencies, from guys who don't pay that much attention to it. Obviously, the higher level guys like Trent and all those guys, they're going to be more honed in and more profound with those techniques. But, you still get those tendencies. But, I think the biggest thing is formations. Really looking at formations and studying those to figure out, okay, what could I possibly get? Is it going to be play action pass? Is it going to be run? Is it back at home? Or is he offset, gun near, gun forward, out formation? Just different things like that to help you give tips and, condensed sets, 2x2, pair slide, just different things like that you really didn't pay attention to in the college game. That's you're like, okay, now's the thing that I have to look at to be successful.
How do you feel so far about this defense, especially now that you have a defensive coordinator that has the defensive line background in Adam Dirty? What's that process been like for you?
It's been great. Coming in, the hardest thing was being able to understand what he was saying. But I think once you get past that, you realize how much the guy loves coming and helping us every day, putting his best foot forward. He really loves and truly cares about the game of football, and also us as a team, and helping guys develop. He's huge on development and teaching how to do things the right way. So I think that's really good. The defense is great. Mike has a great scheme. I love it. I love everything about that. I think the outside backers are going to produce really, really well in this defense. So I can't complain at all.
With Dirty's accent, I just have to ask you straight up, is that something where it really hones in on your attention more when you've got a dude yelling at you in a thick British accent? Jonathan Hankins said that was something when you first started playing for him. It was like, oh wow, it just completely catches you off guard. Is that something that gets you alarmed, more honed in because of that, at least initially?
I think you have to pay more attention to what he's saying, be more honed in on the details and try to make out what he's saying. But he always say if you can't understand what I'm saying, ask. So I think that's the second part of it. Also, if you don't understand, asking clarity on it. But he does a great job.
When you're looking at this season, what are your individual goals, and what do you think the ceiling is for this defense with this new scheme and the players that have been added?
My goal is to go out and be better than I was last year. And I think as long as you continue to take that step forward each and every week, each and every day, and go out and be the best teammate possible, I feel like everything that I want to do is going to fall into place. As far as the defense goes with this scheme, I don't think there is a limit. I think Mike does a pretty good job of putting everybody in a position to be successful, to go out and make plays, and play 12 as one. That's our motto around here: 12 as one, be one cohesive group, go out and do whatever it takes to win.
As always, you can follow me on X and Threads at Corbin Smith NFL. You can follow Rob at Rob Rang. Make sure to subscribe to Locked On Seahawks on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast, to make sure you don't miss a single episode. Coming up tomorrow, the Seahawks will have another padded practice at the VMAC. We'll dive into some takeaways, and we'll have another interview. Mike Jarrell, the rookie out of Findlay University, the former Oiler, will be joining us to share his thoughts on his first training camp and working with his new veteran mentor that's on the roster. We'll get to that on tomorrow's show. Make sure that you're listening in and enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Go Hawks.